All right, today we're going to be talking about Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol was a pop artist, and pop is short for popular. The idea being that pop art was for the masses, it was for uh, the common man, if you will. It was the intent of pop art was to be fairly simplistic, making rudimentary use of those elements of art, lots of primary colors, lots of simple shape, breaking things down to those basic shapes. And it was kind of response to some of the more complex art that was going on at the time. We're going to be looking specifically at, oh, go back, I always hit the wrong button there. We're going to be looking specifically at the work that Warhol created that really propelled his success and some of the collaborations he did with other artists, particularly with Jean-Michel Basquiat. But we'll start with a little biography. Andy Warhol was a pop artist born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on August 6th, 1928. When he was young, he was often ill and stuck in bed where he would draw and listen to the radio, read comics, and cut out pictures from magazines. All of these type of things later inspired that artwork, particularly when you think about his exposure to the magazines and again that popular culture, which is that pop art's response to. Early in his career, he was an illustrator. He drew and created drawings for a shoe company. Later on, he was hired to design album covers and posters. And in the late 1950s, Warhol received recognition from several galleries and opened a very large studio called the Gallery in 1964. It was a space where lots of popular artists were coming and sharing ideas and really wanted to be close to Andy Warhol, who was inspirational to a lot of artists that were working at that time. Passed away on February 22nd, 1987. Interesting thing, he was not born Andy Warhol. Let's scroll down so you can see that. Andy Warhol's last name was actually Warhola. A woman's magazine called Glamour accidentally left the A off the end of his name when they published his first shoe illustration. It stuck and he kept it that way. So why pop art? The pop art movement was a reaction again to that art that was really complex, that was a complicated uh, um, modes of creation, and so this was like a very simplistic mode of creation for art, and so it was a way of kind of countering what they saw kind of going on in the art world that was making art less accessible for the common man. Pop artists wanted to make artwork that anyone could understand. Warhol had a commercial art background and understood that people could relate to images that they could recognize. And when we talk commercial art, we're thinking about how artists use their skills to make things that sell or promote products and that sort of thing. If you think about the artists who created the little Nike swoosh and things like that, those are commercial artists. And so if we look at what we're talking about, a simplistic sort of response to a complicated art form going on, this is a painting by Jackson Pollock. To the common man, the common person looking at this, they thought at the time that this was most people had the difficulty seeing how the elements of art were being used. They had difficulty seeing what the composition was, understanding how and why a line was being used the way it was. When in reality, these paintings by Jackson Pollock are incredibly complicated, very sophisticated. They literally use mathematical algorithms to come up with paintings that are like what Jackson Pollock was able to come up with, and so that was what was going on. And Warhol and others like him responded in this way with this pop art that would be popular with again a broader viewer group of viewers. A little factory field trip here. When Warhol became very successful, he opened a large studio called the Factory, where he made lots of artwork, movies, and music. Again, this was a space where other artists would come. This was the third one they're showing here is this tall building. It made a lot of his famous works here. Um, and Warhol had a lot of assistants who would come in and help him. He would often come up with a lot of ideas, but the execution of those ideas were often done by um, other artists or apprentice artists who were working with him. And he started working with this technique called silkscreen. Sometimes it's also known as serigraph. And it's a way of essentially taking a stencil, if you will, and sort of pushing ink through that stencil. And that stencil is sort of held in place, if you will, by the screen. And so there's different ways that you can you create that stencil, if you will, photo sensitive light emulsions are an easy way to create that sort of thing. And I'm going to actually do a silk screen. I'm probably not going to do the entire process, but I'll show you the printing part of it anyway on our make day as one of the ways that you could do yours if you have access. If you don't, though, we're going to look at how you can create yours in Sketchpad or even Minecraft. We'll talk about that in a moment. Many celebrities went to Andy Warhol's studio to be photographed with him. Many famous artists, pop bands, celebrities came to the factory. And Andy Warhol was one of these people who really enjoyed all that attention. He kind of sucked all that in and was very happy being the center of attention. At the factory, Warhol focused on experimenting with our process called the silk screen. Look at this image and select the tab, see how the silk screen process works. And so essentially, you have um, this screen, and then this is essentially the stencil. Now, again, how you put that image, and they're just going to list that as image onto the screen is going to they can go on with drawing fluid where you are essentially putting something on the screen where ink won't pass through and not putting something on the screen where you want the ink to pass through. That's all kind of pushed through. The ink's pushed through with the squeegee here, and you have a substrate. They're calling that they don't really list that. This yellow, whatever you print on, and this it looks like a yellow piece of paper in this image. That's your substrate that you're printing onto. Often we print onto T-shirts, but you can print on paper and that sort of thing. And we'll talk about that process a little more on the make day. Pop artists often include text, symbols, popular people, and even popular products in their artwork. Again, pop culture, pop art looks to kind of respond to pop culture, and that is what's the popular culture going on around us in that moment, essentially. But what really makes pop art pop are the elements of art and the principles of design. So again, we're going to look at how they simplify the use of the elements and principles. Many pop artists use text in their artwork or draw from the text for inspiration. Lichtenstein, for instance, used comic books in his artwork. He also used bright colors, and they're asking you what kinds of colors. And just like we saw Frank Stella, again working in around this time, using these very basic, simplistic colors, we see those primary colors being used by Roy Lichtenstein. Let's look at Jeff Koons, pop artist, uses symbols in their artwork. Koons created this sculpture of tulips for his celebration series, make them look a bit like balloons. They're much larger in scale. The regular balloon or tulips, which creates emphasis. How did Koons create emphasis in his artwork? He used that element we um, talk about with that focal point, that area of emphasis, that thing that we want to look at most. And he did that by making these bright and shiny, and again, using those bright colors. And if you look around the space around it, it's kind of this neutral beige and this gray behind it. So those bright colors help create that as well. Andy Warhol. Many pop art images use famous people as their subject. Warhol painted of China leader Mao Zedong. The orange hues in the painting contrast with the blue background. What principle of design do you notice on the wall behind this painting? And of course, that's going to be pattern. You see the pattern going on in the space behind. And I've seen this work of art. It's really very cool. Also use many popular objects in pop art. Things like food, and this one's an example of the Campbell soup can he was so familiar with. By repeating these over and over again, it creates this very um, uh, repeated pattern, very uh, concise pattern, because it's the exact same thing being used over and over and over again. It does create that very symmetrical design. You don't have anything varying from one side to the other. In the studio time, and we're going to look at in our studio time, we're going to be making an image sort of like this. And then how you do, I'm going to ask you to make an image that 9 times over, and then cut, paste, somehow assemble them onto make one piece out of it. Now, how you can do that is up to you. You can, and it doesn't have to be 9. You can do as few as 4 if you like, depending on what medium you're using. It might be a little easier, but we're going to make a symmetrical design of, again, at least 4. 9 would be optimal. And we're going to either use Sketchpad. I'm gonna give you an example in Sketchpad 5.1, and it's got a couple of neat bucket fills that really make it a little easier to do some of this. We're going to look at how you can do it in Silkscreen, and then we're going to look at how you can also create um, in Minecraft. So collaborations, we're talking about Andy and how he collaborated with other artists, particularly Jean-Michel Basquiat. So why is it that artists even collaborate? Why do they work with somebody else, get with somebody else to create a work of art? Well, support is the first one that they talk about here. Um, when you have someone to bounce your ideas off of, you can kind of call out some of those ideas maybe that are a miss to begin with. It's easier with the perspective of having another artist there. Inspiration again. If you see another artist do something that really inspires you, then you can respond to what they've done. And this is sort of how the two worked. And so Andy Warhol calls on those very common, recognizable, familiar images. The Arm& Hammer baking soda image, and then this is how Jean-Michel responded to that work, and how Jean-Michel's known for his almost childlike drawings that kind of explain sort of the world around him, and that's essentially one of those ways that they were able to blend their styles and come up with something sort of new and unique by having that very opposite ends of that spectrum, if you will. Artists gain inspiration from each other. They also gain inspiration from the things they see around them. Warhol was inspired by advertising and popular culture. This artwork has popular brands of soup, cleaning products, even ketchup. Here he's standing in front of his artwork inspired by cleaning products, and the other image, a Warhol painting of a popular soft drink, hangs on a museum wall. He liked to incorporate celebrities. He often did a lot of these prints of various celebrities. Elizabeth Taylor, she was hugely famous actress. Judy Garland, and I think this is one of my favorites. It's very simple. Again, he breaks down a simple black and white photograph. It's the black and white photograph, pretty much essentially by itself, but with that blue purple on the left side. Michael Jackson, again, he's experimenting with screen printing. We'll talk about the screen printing process. Breaks it down into very um, um, basic colors. It's three or four color process is generally how a lot of them are done. So you break it down into three, four, sometimes maybe six or seven colors. There's an artist in Lexington by the name of Joey Petro. I think Joey Petro the fourth is he's a serigraph artist or screen printer, and his will have sometimes have 20 or 30 colors. They're amazing. This is a portrait of John Lennon. He was one of the Beatles. And again, he was incredibly popular, which made him ripe for picking with the Andy Warhol style. Portrait of Queen Elizabeth, again, incredibly popular, but also representational of this bigger idea. Green Versace complements the bright pink dresses, and again, all those we're looking at how you use a lot of primary, secondary colors, a lot of contrasting colors, that complementary colors, that sort of thing. Artists are sometimes inspired by the things they love and their memories. Warhol loved soup since he was a little boy, and some of his most famous works are actually just cans of soup. So, looking at how he used warm colors a lot, and there's sort of a theory to that warm color gives us that sense of warmth and that sense of familiarity that might be kind of reminiscent of how he felt about the soup itself. That warm, fuzzy feeling, if you will, using warm, fuzzy colors. Using proper proportions, we want people want to talk about him as an abstract artist sometimes. Not really. He didn't abstract things a lot. He kept them pretty much just the way they were. So using the proper proportion, using essentially proper color, and specifically as it relates to like these soup cans. Now, of course, he gets the abstraction comes when you see those the use of color in like those portraits that he did. They're showing you here the grid system, and it's a way of gridding off a drawing or something that you're going to draw, and then gridding off the paper you're going to draw it onto. And you've probably done these types of things, little drawings. There's little skill drawing challenges often you'll find in magazines or the newspaper where you've draw what's in each box, and when you get done, you have a finished item. Well, that's the way this sort of works. You draw what you see in each box, but you can enlarge this way, change the scale of it. Um, Leonardo da Vinci actually would take a frame that he had strung wires on and a grid pattern and place it in front of whatever it was he was drawing to use this same sort of technique to draw landscapes. We're not going to worry about that studio time. In fact, we're going to look real quick here about the use of pattern over and over again, repetition. So again, repeating those images over and over again helps create that repetition, which leads very often to pattern. Oops, I hate when I do that. Go back there. I think we were on 20 or 18. Maybe so. Yeah, Warhol's repetition. So repetition helps create successful works of art. Often, Warhol would repeat those famous peoples or objects in his word to help spread the messages and create emphasis. And here are some of his repeated works of art. The Marilyn Monroe is what he is probably most famous for when we think about Andy Warhol. It's hard not to think about Marilyn Monroe. When she passed away, Warhol created these series of portraits to honor her. The first part of her artwork shows her bright blonde hair and colorful makeup. The color fades away into black and white in the second part. And so they ask, why do you think he made that choice? And there's been a lot of different people who um, have kind of theorized about why that is, but uh, probably a response to her passing away and how maybe as the life was taken out of her. So was that color, if you will, that colorful personality. Repetition again. Warhol wanted to create small or subtle changes in repetition in his artwork. Jackie Onassis is the wife and first lady of President John F. Kennedy. After he passed away, Warhol found images of her with different emotions. He repeated the slightly different images with shades of tints of blue. Why do you think he chose blue? If you look, most of those images aren't particularly happy. That we see the one here where she's smiling, and it's kind of repeated. But most of them you can see. Um, these three in particular kind of have a sort of solemn look to them. Use repetition in those cans. We talked about that. And if you look at the way they're assembled there, it almost looks like the cans on the shelves themselves, which probably had a lot to do with why he created that, so that person would get that feeling of being in the grocery store and seeing that soup right there in front of them. Um, talking about how he used color again, a lot of primary and secondary color, lots of complementary colors. Um, so we're not going to do the studio time the way they suggest. Uh, I'm going to again talk to you about a couple ways here before we get done, but we need to first do our attendance question of the week. And so today's is Chuck Close. Chuck Close. My glasses on. Why do I always do this? Chuck Close. He's an American painter, artist, photographer. He makes massive scale photorealistic portraits. He often paints abstract portraits of himself and others. Um, and the way he works is an incredibly unique style of art here. He divides these enormous canvases into these little tiny squares and rectangles. He applies what would be, to most people, random color into these squares. But when you step back, and we'll go back, this is actually made up of those little squares. When you go back far enough, those little squares begin to blend together, and you get a photorealistic image. It's a remarkable style of art that only Chuck Close can really do. If you squint while you look at this child, you can see, and if the further away you get away from your computer while you look at that image, the more photorealistic it looks. Chuck Close, our attendance question answer is Chuck Close. All right. So how are we going to do our uh, make day this week? So here are your options. I'm going to leave Chuck Close up here while we talk about this. Chuck Close is your attendance question answer again. You have the option of using Sketchpad 5.0. I'm going to show you how you can use it on the Make Day video. You have the option of making a stencil, and I'll show you how to do that on the Make Day, and we'll do a screen print and how you can kind of do something similar. And last but not least, you can use Minecraft, and you're probably wondering, what are you talking about? If you have Minecraft Education Edition loaded up on your computer, and you should have access to it, everybody does. Whoops. You can come to class to the Make Day. Come early to the first session, and I'm going to run it all the way for 90 minutes. It'll be open the whole time. And you can come in to open up quickly. All right. You can come into my world. I'll invite you in. And you can see I'm building right now for my elementary students. But you can come into my art world here and you can build directly in here. as some type of Andy Warhol related work of art. And you'll have about 90 minutes to do so if you come and work. This one took me about 35 minutes, 30 minutes. But this is my Andy Warhol inspired work of art. Now, how you'll do yours doesn't have to be like that. You might do a soup can. You might do uh, you, something that is popular today. You might try to make an image of and maybe a Nike, the Nike logo, or the Adidas logo, or some other type of logo that you're familiar with that represents a product that you all are familiar with and and make use of. Again, think about those popular culture things that you might do in the Minecraft world. And so on the make day, when you come, I'm actually going to have two meetings. I'm actually going to start operating two classrooms. So we'll have one class where you can watch the traditional make day video and make your art using um, um, either some type of stencil, the sketch pad, or again, I got even if crayons and markers are what you have, you can use that as well, and I'll show you how you can kind of make use of any of those things. But I'll have a second meeting open, Zoom meeting where we can communicate, and I can invite you to come to the art world here, the art classroom world, and in this space over here, you can pick an area anywhere you want and build something Andy Warhol related. All right, guys. I look forward to seeing you on the Make Day. Have a great day.